disruptive.
America that I fought for.
Weird thing to happen. Hello, one and all. Welcome to this edition of Kitz Corner. It's been a fantastic day so far. So we got an interesting story for you here. Depending on how you take this, if you're part of the younger Gen Z generation, you might not take this story well. But I'm going to give a bit of defense. I'm going to be an equal opportunist and try to make light of this particular story, because this is another try to slam on Gen Z in the workplace, or Gen Z in the workplace, as we say here in Canada, Zed. And it can go a different, multiple different ways. But here's what they're talking about here. This is from the New York Post, and they say Gen Z grads are tanking job interviews, struggling to find full-time positions, a new study reports. So this is from the New York Post. Fox Business put this together, and like I said, I'm going to try to make the light of this. And I can't really defend much on this because, unfortunately, I'm not part of this generation. I am kind of at the cusp of millennial. I was born in 1995, which I believe millennial cuts off in 96. So I'm kind of at the receiving end of millennial, transitioning to Gen Z, but I'm not the Gen Z generation. So I can't really defend this particular generation. But like I do with any generation, there's good, there's bad, and the ugly with every single generation. And that's why a lot of the times I don't report stories like this, because I find it distracting. I find it kind of, that divisive, just trying to pick on people, and just doesn't do any good. But this is an interesting story. So it says recent college graduates are failing at job interviews, according to a new study. Developmental setbacks from various factors has appeared to delay communication skills among Gen Z graduates, and employers are taking notice. In a December 2023 study, the New Jersey-based research group Intelligent surveyed 800 U.S. managers, directors, and executives who are involved in hiring. The respondents reported that Gen Z candidates struggle to pick up professional cues, causing 39% of employers to favor hiring older candidates. About 60% of employers say they are willing to offer more benefits and pay higher salaries to attract older workers rather than recent grads. For that same reason, 48% of employers are offering remote or hybrid positions to older employees, and 46% are willing to hire overqualified candidates, according to the new study. 1 in 5 employers reported that recent college grads are genuinely unprepared when it comes to interviewing for a job. More than half of employers surveyed that said Gen Z candidates struggle with the most eye contact during interviews. Candidates in this age group also asked for unreasonable salaries and have dressed inappropriate for in-person interviews, according to about half the study respondents. Even virtual interviews have posed issues, with 21% of employers reporting that some candidates refuse to turn on their cameras for the interview. That statistic almost shocked me, because Gen Z, our younger generation, we're so very selfie, Instagram, like we're very picturesque, camera ready, motivated generation. Like, you think of all the times that people post on social media, but yet they don't want to turn on a camera to talk to someone. Like, I almost couldn't believe that. That almost drew me away. Nearly 20% of employers said that they've even had a recent college grad bring a parent to an interview. 2 in 3 employers reported that Gen Z employees are unable to manage their workloads, while about 60% say they are frequently late to work and often miss assignment deadlines. 63% of employers consider Gen Z employees to be entitled, while 58% say they get offended too easily and are overall unprepared for the workforce. Employers have also noted that their youngest employees lack professionalism, do not respond well to feedback, and have poor communication skills. Almost half, 47% of employers in the survey, said they have fired a recent college graduate. In a separate August 2023 intelligence survey, 62% of respondents say culture is the primary reason that many recent college grads are unprepared. Half the respondents blaming parenting. 48% say the COVID pandemic is the culprit, and 46% said educators are the root of the problem. Human resources expert Natalie E. Norfus, founder of the Norfus firm in Miami, Florida, who was involved in the new study, points the fingers at parents, the pandemic, and the shifting priorities of employers. In this day and age, that's what she's saying. Employers are far less willing to invest the effort and money it takes to train an inexperienced worker because the demands of production are at an all-time high and average workplace tenures are lower, he said in an email sent to Fox News Digital. We've heard several managers say they don't want to waste time training someone who's just going to leave. So, this is this comes off in many different ways. This comes off in many different ways. And like I said, I don't want to I can't put all the burden on, this particular generation because this generation, yes, they grew up in the internet age. They're very, social media savvy, and sometimes that could lead to a shorter attention span, and sometimes they're not, they're raised differently than our parents and grandparents. Sure, there's a lot of factors to be said about that. But there's also factors when it comes to the workplace themselves, when people are, working the 9 to 5 job and just getting all stick and no carrot. They're not getting really attached to a job. They feel no reason. They're feeling no kind of initiative to feel like they need to be at this workplace. So there's that kind of factor into it. But also the fact, and I love how they bring culture to this. They say that culture is responsible for this. But you have to look at the overall picture because culture, in my mind, is downstream from economics. It's downstream from the top, 1%. So if you think about, you know, your grandparents' generation or your parents' generation, or, back in the day, you look at like older TV shows. Like, for example, yesterday, I watched reruns of Happy Days just to show how old I am. Even though I'm 28, almost gonna be 29. Um, I was watching reruns of a 70s television show, but the thing about that television show was it kind of showed the parameters of the, American dream. It was kind of the picturesque American family that the father owned a hardware store, the mother was a stay-at-home mom, but she also, donated her time to the Red Cross. The kids went off to school, two of them went off to college. They were able to afford two cars. They had this lovely, modern day house in, Midwest Wisconsin. That was kind of the American dream, the picturesque that, if you, put in the hours, if you worked a 40-hour week, you were able to obtain that. Well, over many, many years, that attainment is no longer feasible to younger generations. So they're kind of out of reach to this. So of course there's going to be some feedback. Of course there's going to be some setbacks to younger kids that are looking at this and saying, well, if I can't put in the time and get the same guarantee, or at least point in the direction of getting that American dream, then what exactly is the point? What exactly is the initiative? Again, it's basically all stick and no carrots. So that's a lot to be said about that. And I noticed that they didn't really highlight in in this piece here that, the economic factors, and they also don't highlight about the fact that, especially in this generation and for years to come, is automation and AI technology, because that's the new boogeyman, that's the new fear tactic that they're trying to scare the workforce. They're trying to scare the workforce because it used to be that, hey, if you didn't, put in as many hours as the guy next to you, we could take that job and outsource it to another country and exploit those people because they're going to work cheaper and harder and faster. We're going to crank the whip on them because you won't be able to crank the whip. That used to be the case, and in some ways it is still the case. But now, because of AI technology, because of automation that's also rolling out, now they're able to fear workers by saying, hey, your job can be replaced by a robot. And we're seeing a lot of that now. There was just a report that came out of Bloomberg, I think, where they said 70% of, white collar jobs will probably not exist in the next 5 years. All those executive assistant jobs and secretaries and bookkeepers and note takers and all this that could cease to exist because of automation. So there's so many factors to this. And I think one of the things that we need to focus on is, first of all, we got to stop this generational divide. We need to stop, uh, kind of putting the burden on one particular generation. Because, like I said, any generation you look at, whether it's baby boomers, the X, millennials, Gen Z, um, what's the next one? Gen Alpha or whatever it's called. Um, Whoever it is, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly of all of this. So to separate every generation and then to shame the younger generation because they're not as economically well off as the older generation, which, by the way, the older generation had more regulations on banks taking over. They had not as much corruption as we're dealing with now. They're not spending trillions of dollars in warfare as we're dealing with right now. So there's so many things to look at this. Um, but my thing is that we need to stop this separational divide between, the older generation and the younger generation, and we need to intertwine the similarities of each generation and try to find a way that we can all interact in a communal society. We need to find the good about Gen Z and the good about baby boomers and the good about Gen X and the good about millennials and come together with our similarities so that we can actually improve on society rather than just, continuing to shit upon every single generation because all we're doing is furthering the divide. And you wonder why Gen Z has little more less respect for the older generation because they're constantly getting shit on. They're constantly getting the finger pointed at. And yet they don't they don't know how to fix that. They don't know how to actually improve themselves so they can be respected by the older generation. And it's all just part of this propaganda to again further divide people. So we need to really come together and learn from each generation and find a way that we can intertwine each generation so that we can move forward and innovate and make society better for people and make workplaces better for people because it doesn't matter who you're talking to. There's a lot of people out there that are sick and tired of the 9 to 5 grind and not getting anywhere. You know, you take, for example, Happy Days, you know, when you did the 9 to 5 grind, you were actually able to afford a house. You were able to afford 2 cars. You were able to afford food on the table. You were able to afford electricity. You were able to send your kids to college. You were able to get them to good schools. That is no longer obtainable. So a lot of people are looking at that and they're putting their nose up at the fact that no matter where I go, it's not going to be obtainable. So there's a lot to be said about this, and this is kind of fascinating. But like I said, I'm the cusp millennial, so I understand the struggles of younger generation because I'm kind of in that area. But at the same time, I'm not as in that generation as the typical Gen Z or Gen Z people are. But it is statistics are kind of interesting. The fact that they refuse to put their camera on. Again, we live in a camera savvy world. Like we have our phones, we take pictures, we selfie everything. I was kind of shocked by that they didn't want to have interviews on camera. I thought that was kind of what everybody wanted. But this is just one study, so I don't know exactly if this is actually 100% proven, but this is something that needs to we do need to address it because, as you can tell, a lot of places are feeling that. But I don't think, it mentioned some interesting points there, but also at the same time, it was lacking a lot of the bigger perspective. So I think we just need to come together. We need to find the good of each generation and try to find a way that we can, intertwine that or, mingle that into the workplace and try to find a way that we can find camaraderie between each other to make the workplace better for people, for everybody. And that's the thing that they left out pretty much in this article.